Day 700. Stephen finally tried to kill us. Picture this, if you will. I'm standing there, holding on to Lisa and trying to get Kyle to stop panicking for 1 second so I can think as Stephen sits behind the wheel of the RV that had briefly started rolling toward us. But that's only part of how the week ended. Let me go back to the start of it. About a week ago, just after I finished the first entry, I lost my temper with Stephen when I realized he had taken the map and changed the trip plan. Normally, I try to remain calm in these kind of situations, but the original plan had taken hours of back and forth with Lisa, so we could both see all the sights we wanted to see. Having no plan and no map meant we would either need to start back at the beginning, trying to remember everything we'd scheduled for the next month, or just wing it and see how it goes. I know Lisa is only a mannequin, but she can be very persuasive when she wants to be, and I didn't feel like arguing about the trip again. So I told Stephen he was on his last chance and threatened to not only chop him up into pieces, but then burn those pieces and use the ash to write my next entry. The message must have gotten through to him because he remained quiet for the rest of the night and stared out the window. After promising Lisa we would make a stop in Pittsburgh next month to see her mother, a plastic mold with an attitude, she agreed to let me just drive and see where we wound up. We were already in Nebraska, and there were a couple of places I'd missed the first time through Colorado, so I decided to use part of Stephen's attempted reroute to sightsee. Making our way into colorful Colorado, as all the signs say, we headed for the Rocky Mountain National Park. This should have been my first stop the last time through, but I got distracted by a model railroad museum and spent the planned duration of the visit seeing how many trains I could crash into the little people. Now, the Rocky Mountain National Park itself consists of a lot of places to hike and lots of scenic spots. Knowing Stephen was planning something, I kept him close during the visit. He never left my side, and I never parked anywhere he would be able to do something stupid. It's late July as I write this, and the weather was perfect for hiking a few days ago, so we took full advantage of it. Kyle was excited to see the trails his ancestors walked, even after I explained to him that he was made in a factory in China and he didn't have ancestors per se. Lisa was just happy to have some fresh air, despite the change of plans, and even Stephen seemed to be loosening up and enjoying himself. We spent 2 full days hiking, more than I wanted to be out, but the park was just amazing to see. It might have been more amazing had there been animals, but I reasoned that seeing deer and elk would also mean that there would be bears and mountain lions, so it wasn't the worst trade off. Once we'd seen all we wanted to see, we piled back into the RV and moved out. Mount Evans was the next stop, being only a couple hours away from us. It's billed as the highest paved road in the country, and since I didn't really want to carry Lisa, Kyle, and Stephen up a mountain, driving up one sounded like an excellent way to see a peak with as little effort as possible. Reaching the top, we spent a few minutes observing the view, checking out the majesty that is the Rocky Mountains. It was a little bit windier than I anticipated, and Lisa's flowery hat flew off her head and would have made its way down the mountain if not for a last-minute dive where I caught it while scraping my elbow up. The scraped elbow would have been bad enough on its own, but I also found out firsthand what altitude sickness was like as I struggled to catch my breath in the thin air. I nearly drove off the mountain on the way back down as I could barely think straight, but we wound up making it back to ground level, safe and sound. Through all of this, Stephen seemed to be having a great time. He stopped whispering about me in the middle of the night, and he even smiled once. It was a little weird seeing a statue of Bigfoot smile, but I wanted to focus on the positive. Making our way back into Denver, I wanted to get some maintenance done on the RV as it was due for an oil change and general service. I found a truck stop with an RV dealership next door and went about my business. I changed the oil, checked all the joints and tires, resealed the roof, all the normal stuff you have to do to keep an RV moving. As I was finishing up, I noticed a really nice set of blocks sitting on one of the shelves. Blocks, if you don't know, are for keeping a large vehicle in place. I would normally have picked some up early on, but I honestly just didn't feel like going through the extra step of putting them out, and I hadn't really seen any I liked until then. So, with the fresh oil, all the joints lubed up, a new map from the truck stop, and some blocks, we were on our way once again. Yesterday, we decided to plan out stops at a couple more overlooks before leaving Colorado and heading back east. We found a couple on the map that looked interesting, but neither of them panned out as more than just looking out over a field or two at a slightly elevated angle. I found a scenic byway through Estes Park and decided to head up that way this morning. As we drove the byway, we found several places to pull over and take in the view. Then we stopped at what we all agreed would be the last one. As we climbed out of the RV, Steven said he wasn't feeling well and asked to just wait inside. I didn't really think much of it as he had been starting to get along with everyone, so I left him at the table and went out with Lisa and Kyle. I dropped the blocks just in front of the back tires and we all went down to check out the view. As we were standing there, soaking in Mother Nature's finest eye candy, I heard the distinct sound of the air brake releasing on the RV. I turned around just in time to see the house on wheels lurching forward before coming to an abrupt halt on the blocks. For a moment, Stephen and I just stared at each other. I could see what appeared to be panic in his little plastic eyes as he worked out the next steps in his head. Shoving my hand in my pocket, I pulled out the keys and dangled them in the air. This seemed to break him out of his trance, and he turned around, defeated, before returning to his seat in the back. As odd as the events of the past couple of years have been, this is the first time I actually witnessed one of my companions move themselves. I knew something was up with Stephen in particular, but even he kept any movement he was doing to the times when I wasn't looking. Something was going on, and I was determined to find out what. Getting Kyle calmed down and telling him and Lisa to sit on a bench, I slowly made my way back to the RV. Stephen was sitting in his usual seat, staring out the window. "You tried to kill us," I said, trying to ignore how foolish it felt talking to what is supposed to be an inanimate object. At first, I thought he would just remain quiet, or at most whisper something like he usually did. I was proven wrong once again when he finally broke the silence. "I'm sorry," he said in an unexpectedly squeaky voice. I nearly emptied my bowels right then and there. This was the first voice making its way to my ears in 2 years, and it was coming from a statue. Even more, his lips weren't moving. You can really talk then? What's going on? Why did you try to run us over?" I sat down across from him, my legs starting to feel rubbery. "Sometimes I just get these urges, you know. When everyone disappeared, I thought that was it for me. Then you showed up, and now I don't know what to do," he replied, turning to face me as he spoke. At this point, I was pretty sure I was losing my mind. I remember reading an article somewhere before the world ended that said human beings have important social needs, and when those needs aren't met, we go crazy. I used to think that didn't apply to me. Spending the majority of my time alone in the cab of a truck was my ideal situation, but at this point, I have to question that logic. Maybe I just took a little longer to break than normal people. "Please don't cut me up and burn my body. I didn't mean to hurt anyone. I just can't help myself sometimes," Stephen said, snapping me out of my mental break. "Well, I can't have you trying to kill anyone. What can I do to help you fight those urges?" I wasn't really sure what to do at this point. There was no situation where this ended well. Either this entire thing was in my head, or I was actually talking to a piece of carved wood that was talking back. He stared at me for a long time, not moving or making any sounds. I was leaning toward the whole thing being in my mind when he spoke again. "I want to ride shotgun and tell Kyle to stop making fun of me for being so small." "Kyle can talk too?" "Can't you hear them? They've been talking this whole time." I thought I had just been making up their voices in my mind, as a way to cope with having no one else around. They weren't even audible, just inside my head. Even as I write this, I find myself questioning whether the conversations with them have been real this whole time. "Okay, you can ride shotgun, and I'll talk to Kyle." I was now giving in to the demands of a tiny pine psychopath. Standing up, I went back outside and found Lisa and Kyle sitting right where I'd left them. So he says he'll stop trying to kill us if he can ride shotgun, and he asked that Kyle stop making fun of his height. I didn't feel any more normal talking to them than speaking to Stephen. Thank God he finally spoke up. I've been begging him for weeks to talk to you, but he just droned on and on about how you wouldn't listen, Lisa said, her familiar voice now audible. It felt weird, yet strangely normal to be having conversations with the travel companions I've been around for so long. We all piled back into the RV with the new arrangements in place and decided to just hang out for the night before setting off tomorrow morning. After a brief chat about how things used to be, we all settled in for the night. I wanted to write all of this down before I went to sleep, mostly because I feel like keeping a record of things is going to be fun. I was just about to turn off the lights, but I think I heard something outside. I assume it's just the wind, but who really knows? At this point, I'm too tired to care much, and my mind is still spinning from everything that's happened. If it starts to really bother me, I'll go out and take a look, but I doubt it'll be worth the effort.